They wanted gold, but when they disturbed the sacred river, what rose from the water was not treasure. It was a warning. The sun rose gently over the red soil of Umuaro village, painting the sky in gold. Roosters crowed, and smoke rose from distant huts as women prepared the morning meal. In the heart of the village lived Obinna, a young man whose eyes carried dreams bigger than his father's farmland. Obinna's father, Okorie, was a humble farmer who believed that patience was the true path to riches. But Obinna was restless. He often stared beyond the hills, imagining cities filled with gold, wealth, and fame. "Father," he said one morning, wiping sweat from his face, "why must we always plant and wait? Others are in towns building great things. I want to go too. I want to be rich." Okorie looked at him with slow, heavy eyes. "My son," he said, "wealth without wisdom is a curse. The journey of riches begins inside a man's heart." But Obinna did not understand. His heart burned with hunger for more. That evening, under the giant Iroko tree, an old traveler named Ezudo came to the village square. He was known for his tales of distant lands and hidden treasures. Children gathered around him like bees around honey, but it was Obinna who listened most closely. Ezudo spoke of a place called Ndioma, where the soil glitters when the moon smiles, and where a man's sweat turns to gold if his spirit is pure. Obinna's heart thumped fast. That night, as others slept, he sat by the fire thinking. His mother's words echoed in his mind. "My son, not every road that shines leads home." But Obinna had already made up his mind. The next morning, he packed his father's old walking stick, a small calabash of water, and roasted yam wrapped in banana leaves. He set out before dawn, leaving behind the songs of crickets and his parents' tears. As he walked into the forest path leading to Nindioma, a strange wind blew. The trees whispered like old men. Somewhere between fear and hope, he heard a faint voice saying, "The journey of wealth begins with sacrifice." He stopped, heart pounding. "Who is there?" he asked. No one answered. The wind died. The forest returned to silence. He pressed on. After hours of walking, he reached a river that shimmered under the rising sun. As he bent to drink, an old woman appeared from behind a tree. Her back was bent, and her hair was white as cotton. "My son," she said softly, "where are you going with such haste?" Obinna bowed. "I am going to Ndioma to seek my fortune." The old woman smiled sadly. "The road to wealth is not always paved with gold. Sometimes it is filled with thorns. Take this." She handed him a small gourd. "When your heart grows heavy, drink from it. But only when the sun sleeps." Before he could thank her, she vanished into thin air. Obinna's mouth fell open. He stood still for a while, clutching the gourd tightly. He didn't understand what just happened, but something deep inside him told him that his journey had truly begun. As night fell, he made a small fire by the river and ate his roasted yam. He stared at the stars and whispered, "I will return home rich, or I will not return at all." The frogs croaked. The moon smiled faintly. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes watched him. Eyes that had seen many who walked this same path, only to vanish before they ever reached Ndioma. And far away in Umuaro, Okorie sat by his hut fire and murmured a prayer. "Spirit of the land, guide my son. Let him learn that true wealth is not found in gold, but in the heart that remains pure." The journey had begun. The forest of Nindioma was not like any forest Obinna had seen before. The air was thick with mystery, and every leaf seemed to whisper secrets. The sun barely touched the ground. Instead, it painted golden patterns on the mossy earth. Obinna walked slowly, gripping his father's stick. His heart pounded, but he reminded himself of his dream. I came here for wealth. I must not fear. After walking for hours, he reached a narrow path that divided into three. Each road looked different. The first was wide and bright, filled with singing birds. The second was narrow, rough, and covered in thorns. The third was dark, almost invisible, as if it swallowed light. Then he heard a deep voice from nowhere. Choose your path, young traveler. But remember, not all that shines will bless you. Obinna looked around, trembling. Who speaks, he asked, but only the wind answered. He looked again at the paths. The bright one looked welcoming. The thorny one looked painful. The dark one looked deadly. His heart wanted the bright road, but his spirit remembered the old woman's words. The road to wealth is not always paved with gold. He took a deep breath and stepped into the thorny path. At first, it was just uncomfortable, but soon sharp thorns tore at his legs. The pain burned, and he nearly cried out. Still, he pressed on. Blood stained his trousers. No pain, no reward, he whispered. Halfway through, a loud hiss stopped him. From the bushes, a large python slithered out, its scales glittering like metal. It blocked his way, its eyes fixed on him. Obinna froze. Then the snake spoke. Why do you pass through my path, mortal? Obinna knelt quickly. Great one, I seek the land of Nindioma to find my fortune. The python circled him slowly. Many have said those words, it hissed. Some never left this forest. Tell me, and what will you give in exchange for safe passage? Obinna's hands shook. He remembered his mother's pendant, a small wooden carving she had tied on his neck before he left. It was her blessing. He touched it gently, then removed it. Take this, he said softly. It carries my mother's love. But I must live to make her proud. The python looked at the pendant, then at him. Love is a strong gift. Because you gave from your heart, I will bless your journey. It opened its mouth wide and dropped a shining scale at his feet. Keep this. It will light your way. When darkness comes, the snake vanished into the bush. The forest fell silent again. Obinna held the scale, and for a moment it glowed softly in his palm. He smiled weakly and continued walking. At last, the thorny path ended at a clearing. A small hut stood there, smoke rising from its roof. He knocked gently. An old hunter came out, his face marked with age and wisdom. You look weary, my son. Come and rest, the man said. Obinna entered. The hut smelled of herbs and roasted meat. He sat near the fire, and the hunter gave him water. You walk with destiny, the man said, but destiny is not for the faint-hearted. 3 tests await you before Nindioma accepts you. 3? Obinna asked, eyes wide. Yes, said the hunter. You have passed the first, the test of sacrifice. You gave up what you loved. The next will test your truth. The fire cracked loudly, and smoke rose in strange shapes. When Obinna blinked, the hunter was gone, vanished like mist. He stepped outside. The moon hung high, the air cold. He looked at the shining scale in his hand and whispered, if this is the path to wealth, then I must be ready for more. Far away, unseen in the trees, a shadowy figure watched him and murmured, He has begun to learn, but the road is still long. Wealth will teach him what hunger never did. Obinna lay beside the fire that night, the scale glowing faintly beside him, unaware that the next test, one that would shake his soul, awaited at dawn. The morning came quietly. Dew glistened on the leaves, and a cool breeze brushed Obinna's face. He rose from where he slept, beside the ashes of last night's fire. The glowing snake scale in his hand had dimmed, but it still felt warm, like something alive. He looked around. The old hunter's hut was gone. In its place was a small tree with white flowers. Obinna blinked in surprise. "What magic is this?" he whispered. But there was no answer, only the chirping of birds. He remembered the hunter's words, "The next test will test your truth." So he began walking again, deeper into the forest. After a while, he came upon a wide open field. At its center stood a small wooden bridge across a slow-flowing river. On the other side sat a young woman, dressed in white cloth, her beauty gentle and calm like morning light. "Traveler," she called softly, "come, rest a while." Obinna hesitated, but stepped onto the bridge. The wood creaked beneath his feet. When he reached the other side, the woman smiled. "You have come far," she said. "What do you seek?" "I seek Indioma," Obinna replied, "the land where wealth is born." The woman nodded. "Before you reach it, you must prove that your heart speaks truth." From behind her, two baskets appeared, one filled with gold, the other with yams. She pointed to them. "One of these belongs to you, the other to the next traveler who will come. Choose the one that is yours." Obinna stared at the baskets. The gold glittered like sunlight. The yams looked plain, but fresh. His heart raced. He remembered his hunger, his wounds, his dreams. "Surely the gold is mine," he thought. "I have suffered enough." But then a small voice whispered inside him, "Truth is not always what pleases the eyes." He took a deep breath. "The gold is beautiful," he said aloud, "but I believe the yams are mine. I am still a traveler, not yet worthy of gold." The woman's eyes sparkled. She clapped her hands once, and the gold basket vanished. The yams turned into fruits glowing with golden light. "You have chosen truth over greed," she said. "Those who rush to grab riches lose them faster than the wind." Obinna bowed deeply. "Who are you?" he asked. The woman smiled faintly. "I am the spirit of truth. Many lie to themselves on the road to wealth. But you have passed your second test." Before he could thank her, the wind rose sharply, and she faded into mist. Obinna stood alone again, the glowing fruits beside him. He packed them carefully into his small bag and crossed back over the bridge. But when he turned around, the bridge was gone. Only calm water remained. He walked on until he reached a rocky hill. Climbing it took all his strength, but at the top he found a large stone engraved with strange markings. As he bent closer, he realized the markings formed words in his native tongue. "He who walks in truth walks with light, but the liar's shadow follows him even in the sun." He placed his hand on the stone and said quietly, "I will walk in truth." Just then, the sky darkened. The wind grew wild. From the shadows emerged the same dark figure that had watched him in the night before. Its eyes glowed red. "So," the figure said, in a deep, rumbling voice, "you passed the spirit's test. But remember, truth is easy when no one is watching. Let us see how strong your truth will be when gold stands before hunger." Before Obinna could respond, lightning flashed and the figure disappeared into the clouds. He stood trembling, clutching his stick and the glowing fruits. He didn't understand all the riddles, but one thing was clear. This journey was not only about wealth, it was about who he was becoming. As the sky cleared, he whispered to himself, "If truth is my path to wealth, then I will hold it like life." He descended the hill, unaware that the final and hardest test, one that would strike at his very soul, waited for him beyond the next valley. The wind grew heavy as Obinna walked deeper into the valley. The trees thinned out, and the ground turned grey, lifeless, as if no plant dared to grow there. The air was cold and dry. Even the birds were silent. He felt uneasy. The glowing fruits in his bag dimmed, their golden light fading slowly. The snake scale no longer shone. Obinna stopped and whispered, "Why has the light gone?" A voice answered, not from outside, but from inside him. "Because you are entering the place where truth is tested by fear." He swallowed hard and pressed forward. Soon, mist began to rise from the ground. It wrapped around him like smoke. From within the mist, he began to hear voices, soft at first, then louder. They sounded like his people from Umuaro. "Obinna," one voice cried, "you left us for gold? You forgot your home." Another shouted, "You will never return rich. You will die in the forest." He covered his ears, but the voices grew stronger. He shouted, "Leave me alone." His heart pounded as sweat rolled down his face. Then, through the mist, he saw something, a faint figure, walking toward him. When it came closer, his breath caught. It was his mother. She looked exactly as she did the day he left. Tears filled her eyes. "My son," she said softly, "why do you chase shadows? Come home. Your father is ill. Your people need you." Obinna fell to his knees. "Mother, is it truly you?" She reached out her hand, but her skin was cold like stone. "Come home, Obinna." "Forget Ndioma." He hesitated. The love in her eyes was real. Her voice sounded real. But something deep inside whispered, "This is not your mother." He stepped back. "You are not her," he said firmly. "My mother would never ask me to abandon my purpose." The figure froze, then smiled darkly. Her face melted away into shadow. The mist swirled violently, and the false image vanished into smoke. Immediately, the valley brightened slightly. The snake scale in his hand flickered back to life, glowing faintly. A calm voice spoke again. "You have conquered the test of fear." Obinna sat on a rock, breathing heavily. His clothes were soaked with sweat. "Fear," he murmured, "is the shadow that hides truth." As he rested, a strange cry echoed in the valley. He looked up and saw a small boy running toward him, barefoot, crying. "Help me!" the boy shouted. "Please, my brother is trapped in the pit." Without thinking, Obinna followed. They reached a deep pit, and inside, a young boy struggled to climb out. Obinna dropped his stick and reached down. "Hold on," he said. But just as he pulled the boy halfway up, the ground beneath him cracked. Obinna fell, hitting the pit wall. Dust filled the air. He opened his eyes and saw the boys staring down at him. Then they both smiled. A strange, cruel smile. Their eyes turned black. "You help others," they said in unison, "but who will help you when you fall?" Before he could answer, they vanished. The pit filled with golden sand, rising slowly until it lifted him back to the surface. He gasped for breath, shaking. The wind blew again, softer this time, almost like applause. A gentle voice echoed, "The one who helps others, even when deceived, carries a heart worthy of true wealth." Obinna stood up slowly, his strength returned. The valley that had been dark now shimmered faintly with light. Flowers began to bloom from the once dead ground. He looked up and said quietly, "If this is the Valley of Shadows, then I have walked through it and lived." From the distance he saw a faint golden path leading out of the valley. He picked up his walking stick, wiped his face, and followed it. Behind him, the mist closed again, as if guarding the lessons he had learned. He did not know what lay ahead, but for the first time, he smiled, for he now understood the journey to wealth was not about reaching a place. It was about becoming a man who deserved it. The golden path led Obinna through a long stretch of silence. The wind was calm, and the air smelled faintly of rain and new life. After all the trials, the forest now looked peaceful. Birds sang again, and the sunlight danced softly on the leaves. He walked for hours until the trees parted, revealing a wide plain that glittered under the morning sun. At the far end, golden roofs shimmered like fire. His heart leapt. This had to be Indioma, the land the traveler had spoken of. He dropped to his knees, smiling with tears in his eyes. "I have found it," he whispered, "the land where wealth is born." As he approached the golden city, he saw tall gates guarded by two figures, one male, one female, both dressed in bright robes that sparkled like stars. The man spoke first, his voice deep and calm. "Traveler, before you enter Indioma, you must declare what you seek." Obinna bowed. "I seek wealth, not just for myself, but to bless my family and my people." The woman's eyes softened. "Then you may enter, but know this, the heart that carries greed will find only dust here." The gates opened slowly. A wave of golden light swept over him, warm and gentle. When he stepped inside, his breath caught. Everything glowed. Houses were built from stones that shone like sunlight. Rivers of clear water flowed beside the roads. People walked with calm smiles, wearing robes that sparkled faintly. Yet there was no noise, no laughter, only peace. A young man approached him. "Welcome, traveler," he said. "You have walked far. Ndioma rewards those who have faced the 3 tests." "3?" Obinna asked. "I have faced only 2, sacrifice and truth." The man smiled mysteriously. "You have faced the 3rd too, but you do not know it yet." He guided Obinna to a large hall at the center of the city. Inside, the walls shimmered like mirrors, reflecting Obinna's every movement. At the far end sat a tall, gray-bearded elder on a stone throne. His eyes glowed faintly, full of wisdom. "Welcome, Obinna of Umuaro," the elder said. "We have been expecting you." Obinna bowed deeply. "Great one, I have come seeking the secret of wealth." The elder nodded. "You have passed the trials, sacrifice, truth, and courage. Yet one final question remains before the gift of Indioma can be yours." He pointed to 2 doors on opposite sides of the hall. "Behind the first door lies all the gold, jewels, and treasures of Indioma. Behind the second lies your village, poor, struggling, waiting for you. You may only open one door." Choose. Obinna's heart thundered. His dream was within reach. The golden door shimmered like a promise. He thought of his suffering, the blood on his legs, the nights he slept hungry. He deserved this, didn't he? Then he remembered his father's words. The journey of riches begins inside a man's heart. He took a slow breath and turned to the elder. "If I take the gold, my people will still be poor. But if I return to them, perhaps what I have learned will bring greater wealth than gold." The elder smiled. then you have understood the true meaning of Indioma. He raised his staff, and light filled the room. Indioma is not a place. It is a spirit. Those who seek wealth with a pure heart carry Indioma within them. The golden walls faded away. The hall dissolved into light. Obinna closed his eyes as the wind swirled around him. When he opened them again, he was standing in front of his father's hut in Umuaro. The sun was rising. Children ran past, laughing. The air smelled of yam and smoke. He looked down. His clothes were clean, his wounds gone, but the snake scale and glowing fruits were still in his hand. His mother stepped out, gasping. "Obinna, my son, you have returned." He ran to her, tears streaming down his face. "Mother, I found Indioma, and it lives within us." From that day, Obinna worked with renewed strength. He taught his people what he had learned, that honesty, sacrifice, and courage are the true paths to lasting wealth. Years later, Umuaro became known as a land of peace and prosperity, and when travelers asked Obinna where he found his riches, he would smile and say, "I found it on the road that taught me who I was." The sun rose softly over Umuaro, washing the village in gold. The air was full of the smell of roasted yam and palm wine. Children played around the huts, while elders gathered under the big Iroko tree to tell stories. Life had changed since Obinna's return. He had shared his lessons with the people, showing them how to work together, how to trade fairly, and how to trust one another. Soon, Umuaro became known far and wide, its farmlands fertile, its markets busy, its people happy. Obinna was no longer the poor son of a fisherman. He was now a respected man, his compound filled with visitors, his barns full of yam, his name whispered with honor. Yet in the quiet moments, when the moon was high, he often sat alone, staring at the snake scale that still glowed faintly on his table. One evening, a traveler came to Umuaro. He was tall, dressed in a dark wrapper, and carried a carved wooden staff. His voice was calm but deep, like thunder behind clouds. "I am Ezenwa," he said. "I come from the east, where men speak of a man who found Ndioma." Obinna nodded slowly. "You have found him." Ezenwa smiled faintly. "They say your village thrives, but do your hearts remain pure?" Obinna frowned. "What do you mean?" The traveler's eyes darkened. "Every blessing carries its own shadow. The same gift that brings wealth can also invite greed. I have seen it many times." That night, Obinna couldn't sleep. His mind kept replaying Ezenwa's words. The next day, he began to notice things he had ignored: small arguments in the market, envy in neighbors' eyes, the whispers of those who once called him brother. Soon, a strange restlessness began spreading through the village. Men wanted more land. Women demanded more goods. The harmony Obinna had built started cracking like a clay pot in the sun. One morning, a group of young men came to him angrily. "You promised us prosperity, they said, "but you kept the greatest secret to yourself. Give us the power of Ndioma too." Obinna was stunned. "I gave you everything I learned," he said. "Ndioma lives inside." "Lies," one shouted. "You hide the real charm." "We know it's that snake scale." Before he could reply, they rushed into his hut and grabbed the glowing scale. The moment their hands touched it, a flash of light filled the air, and the scale turned black. A wave of darkness spread across the village. The sky dimmed, winds roared, and the laughter of Umuaro fell silent. People screamed as their barns caught fire, and rivers turned muddy. The greed in their hearts had awakened a curse. Obinna fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "I have failed them," he whispered. The blessing became a curse. Then a gentle voice echoed in the wind, the same voice that had guided him in the forest. "You have not failed, Obinna. Every journey of wealth must pass through the fire of truth. What burns is not the blessing, but the greed it exposes." Realization struck him like lightning. He gathered the villagers and cried out, "Listen to me! Ndioma is not a charm, not a thing you can touch. It is a way of living. When you take more than your neighbor, you kill its spirit." The people, frightened and ashamed, fell silent. Together, they knelt and prayed for forgiveness. Slowly, the wind calmed. The black clouds parted. The snake scale, lying in the dust, began to glow again. Softer this time, humbler. From that day, Obinna made a vow. No matter how wealthy Umuaro became, they would share everything: food, land, laughter, and sorrow. And so the village rose again, not from gold or magic, but from the unity of hearts. Years later, elders would tell their children, "When wealth visits your home, welcome it with humility, or it will turn into a storm." And whenever the moon shone on Obinna's compound, the faint golden glow of the snake scale reminded him that every gift carries its own shadow, and only a pure heart can hold both light and darkness without breaking. The years passed gently in Umuaro. The land was green again, the markets full, and laughter returned to the evenings. Under Obinna's wisdom, the people lived in peace. Yet peace has its own burden, for when the drums grow quiet, pride begins to whisper. Obinna had become more than a leader. He was now a legend. Travelers came from distant lands to hear his story. Chiefs from neighboring villages sought his advice. Some even brought gifts: ivory staffs, fine clothes, gold bracelets. Everywhere he went, people bowed. At first, he resisted the praise, but slowly he began to enjoy it. When people knelt before him, he felt a warmth that reminded him of his early days, the hunger to be seen, respected, admired. One evening, as he sat under the great Iroko tree, Ezenwa returned. The same staff, the same calm eyes. "You have done well, Obinna," he said, "but do you still remember why Ndioma chose you?" Obinna smiled. "Because I learned that true wealth lives in the heart." Ezenwa nodded. "Good. Then remember, the heart that forgets humility loses its crown." Obinna laughed softly. "Do not worry, old friend. I am still the same man." But that night, his thoughts were restless. When dawn came, a group of messengers arrived from the neighboring village of Okuta. They came with drums, calling for help. "Our chief has died," their leader said. "We need a man of wisdom to guide us. Our people have chosen you." Obinna of Umuaro, the villagers of Umuaro, celebrated. Their son was chosen to lead another land. They sang his name, praising his greatness. Even Obinna's mother, now old and gentle, smiled proudly. But Ezenwa stood at a distance, watching in silence. Obinna traveled to Okuta with joy in his heart. The people welcomed him with cheers. They built him a great hut and called him the Man of Two Crowns. Under his rule, Okuta prospered quickly. Crops grew, trade flourished, and festivals returned. Yet the more power he gained, the more he forgot the quiet lessons of his journey. He began to judge harshly. When men disagreed with him, he called them ungrateful. When his council questioned him, he silenced them with pride. One night, as he slept, he dreamed again of the glowing snake scale, but this time It was dull, covered in dust. A faint voice whispered, "The crown is heavy when the heart grows hard." He awoke sweating. For the first time in years, he felt fear again. Days later, a young woman from Okuta came to him crying. Her land had been seized by rich traders under his counsel. She begged for justice, but his guards pushed her away. "The chief is too busy for your noise," they said. That night, the wind blew fiercely across Okuta. Fires broke out in the farms. The rivers overflowed. People cried to Obinna for help, but his pride made him slow to listen. When Ezenwa appeared again, he found him pacing in his grand hut. "Why has the land turned against me?" Obinna cried. Ezenwa looked at him long and sadly. "Because wealth and honor are brothers that fight for the same throne. One serves others, the other serves itself." Obinna fell to his knees. "Then, what must I do?" "Return to Umuaro," Ezenwa said softly. "Return to the soil that taught you humility. Only then will you remember who you are." Without hesitation, Obinna left Okuta that night. He walked alone under the moonlight, past villages and rivers until he saw the familiar hills of Umuaro again. When he entered, his people ran to him. "Why have you returned, our great chief?" they asked. He smiled faintly. "Because greatness without humility is a curse that wears a crown." From that day, Obinna refused all titles. He became a teacher again, sitting under the tree, guiding children and farmers, telling stories of the spirit of Indioma. His name no longer needed songs. His heart had found peace. And when Ezenwa visited one last time, he said, "Now you truly wear the crown, not on your head, but in your soul." Obinna looked up at the morning sun and whispered, "Then let it shine, not for me, but for my people." The Iroko leaves swayed gently, and a calm wind passed through the village, as if Ndioma itself was smiling. The Harmattan wind blew early that year. Dust rolled through Umuaro's paths, coating the leaves in dull gold. The fields were dry, and the air hummed with silence. Obinna sat beneath the great Iroko tree, teaching children about the spirit of work and honesty. His voice was calm, his face older now, wiser. But that evening, something unusual happened. A strange drum beat echoed from the far end of the village, slow, heavy, and unfamiliar. The rhythm was neither of dance nor war. It was a drum of prophecy. The villagers gathered in confusion as the sound grew louder. Out of the dust walked an old woman, her hair white as cotton, her skin wrinkled like dry bark. She leaned on a crooked stick and wore beads that clinked softly with each step. Her eyes, though clouded, shone with unsettling brightness. "Who beats the drum of mystery?" Obinna asked, stepping forward. The woman smiled faintly. "The drum calls not you, but your destiny," the crowd murmured. Obinna helped her sit on a wooden stool beneath the tree. "Mother," he said gently, "what message do you bring?" She pointed toward the hills. "The spirit of Ndioma stirs again. The wealth that blesses your people has begun to wander. Before 3 moons pass, Umuaro will face a test greater than greed." The crowd gasped. "A curse?" someone whispered. The woman shook her head. "Not a curse, a mirror. The things you built will reflect what lives within your hearts. If your hearts remain pure, Umuaro will shine brighter. But if pride or envy returns, your blessings will crumble like sand." She turned to Obinna. "You carry wisdom, son of the river, but your seed will carry destiny. When your bloodline is tested, remember this. Wealth that does not flow becomes poison. Before Obinna could ask more, a strong wind swept through the square. Dust swirled around the old woman, and when it cleared, she was gone. Only her beads lay on the ground, glimmering faintly in the moonlight. That night, the village could not sleep. Some feared the prophecy, others dismissed it. But Obinna sat awake, staring at the beads. They felt heavy in his palm, like truth itself. Days turned to weeks. One morning, traders from the northern lands arrived, bringing strange gifts: mirrors, glass beads, and fine fabrics. They offered to build a new market in Umuaro in exchange for land by the river. It seemed like a blessing, and many villagers rejoiced. But Obinna hesitated. He remembered the old woman's words: "A mirror reflects the heart." Still, the council insisted. "Chief, this is progress. The world is changing. Let Umuaro shine brighter." He finally agreed, though unease filled his heart. The traders built quickly. Soon, the village was filled with noise. Coins clinking, music blaring, strangers shouting. The old peace faded, replaced by hunger for gain. One afternoon, Obinna found two boys fighting over coins in the dust. He separated them, but their eyes burned with greed. Behind them, the new market glittered, full of things that looked valuable but meant nothing. That night, as he walked by the river, the wind carried a voice, soft, familiar, echoing through the reeds. "The river gives, but it also takes. What will you give back, Obinna?" He turned sharply, but saw no one. Only the moon reflected on the water, trembling with each ripple. The next morning, he called the council. "We have built a market of gold, but lost the market of peace," he said. "If we do not stop, Umuaro will destroy itself." They laughed softly. "You fear change, old man. Let the young lead." His heart sank. For the first time, he realized his voice no longer guided the village. The very wisdom that once saved them was now a whisper drowned by noise. That evening, as the sun set in red fire, Obinna held the old woman's beads again. He whispered, "Spirit of Ndioma, show me the way once more." The wind rose suddenly, swirling dust around him. The beads glowed faintly, and a single word echoed through the air: sacrifice. He understood. The only way to cleanse the village again was to give up what they worshipped most, their greed for easy wealth. So he began a quiet mission, visiting homes, speaking to hearts, teaching the young that true riches were not in mirrors or coins, but in unity. Many mocked him, but a few listened. Slowly, his words began to grow again, like seeds in dry soil. And though the prophecy still hung over Umuaro, a new hope flickered, not in gold or trade, but in the hearts that remembered the old truth. Wealth that flows blesses all, but wealth that stands still becomes poison. The moon rose that night like a pale eye, watching over Umuaro. The Harmattan winds had softened, but the silence that followed felt heavier. Obinna sat by his hut, polishing the old beads left by the prophetess. His mind was full of thoughts, of the greed that had begun to rule his people, of the traders' false gifts, of the whisper that told him, sacrifice. Days passed, and strange things began to happen. The once clear river that gave Umuaro life started to darken. The fishermen who went to cast their nets returned empty-handed. Some even claimed the river hissed at night like a living thing in pain. At first, the villagers laughed. "The river is only tired," they said. But Obinna knew better. The spirit of Omaenta, mother of waters, was restless. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, A loud crack echoed across the land. The ground shook slightly, and a heavy wind swept through the farms. When the people ran to the riverbank, they gasped. The water had receded, leaving behind cracked earth and dying fish. "The river is angry," Obinna whispered. He called a meeting of the elders. "The prophecy is upon us. The river rebels because we have forgotten our balance. We took without giving. We worshipped mirrors instead of gratitude." The council argued. "How can we anger water?" one said. "We built new markets, we trade, we grow. Is that a sin?" Obinna stood firm. "It is not the building that angers the spirits. It is the pride that blinds us." That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, thunder rolled through the sky. Dark clouds gathered, and lightning flashed over the hills. The villagers ran for shelter as a storm, unlike any they had seen, began to rage. Rain poured, but the river did not rise. Instead, it churned violently, its waters swirling in furious circles. Obinna, drenched and trembling, walked to the riverbank alone. "O Manta," he shouted into the storm, "Mother of waters, forgive your children." A massive wave rose suddenly, towering before him like a living spirit. Within it, he saw the faint shape of a woman, her eyes glowing blue, her voice thundering like distant drums. "Obinna, son of Umuaro," the river spoke. "Your people were blessed, but they have turned my gift into greed. You sought to restore them, yet they mocked wisdom. Now the river reclaims what it gave." Obinna fell to his knees. "Mother, spare them. Take me if you must, but not the innocent." The spirit's form flickered. "One cannot give back what is already poisoned, but there is still hope. Find the seed beneath the stones, the gift of the earth. Return it to me, and peace will flow again." Then the river's form collapsed into waves, splashing him back to the shore. The next morning, the storm had ended. The land looked broken. Farms were flooded, huts destroyed, and silence hung like a shadow. Obinna gathered the young men and women who still believed. "The spirit has spoken. We must find the seed beneath the stones." They searched the old riverbed for days. Finally, near the heart of the dry basin, Obinna found something, a small, glowing seed buried under smooth black stones. He lifted it carefully, feeling warmth in his palms. He knew what must be done. As the villagers watched, he walked back to the river's edge. The water, though calmer now, still moved uneasily. Obinna raised the seed. "Mother of waters," he said softly, "I return what was forgotten. Let life flow again." He dropped the seed into the river. At first, nothing happened. Then the water began to shimmer, a ripple spreading wider and wider until the whole river glowed with soft blue light. The sound of drums echoed faintly through the air, though no one played them. Slowly, the river began to flow again, gentle, clear, and full of light. Fish returned, and birds sang above the trees. The people fell to their knees, weeping. That night, as the stars shone above Umuaro, Obinna sat quietly by the riverbank. The beads around his neck glowed faintly, and the whisper of the river was peaceful again. But in his heart, he knew the journey was not over. The river had forgiven, but it had also warned. Wealth was not a gift to hoard, but a flow to share. The rebellion of the river was not its anger, it was its teaching. And as the moon rose, Obinna whispered to himself, "When man forgets the hand that feeds him, even water must remind him of thirst." The river flowed again, soft and steady, like a mother's song after a long silence. Umuaro was alive once more. Farms green with life, fish dancing beneath the clear waters, children laughing as they fetched water in calabashes. The people celebrated, beating drums and offering thanks to the river goddess. Yet as the sound of joy filled the air, Obinna's heart remained still. He sat quietly by the riverbank, watching the water glisten beneath the morning sun. Peace had returned, yes, but he knew peace always comes with a price. Weeks passed, and the villagers began to forget the storm, the prophecy, and even the sacrifice that restored them. New traders returned with their shiny goods and quick promises. This time, we will be careful, they said. But Obinna saw the same hunger flickering in their eyes. He called for a meeting under the great Iroko tree. "My people," he said calmly, "the river forgave us, but we must not test her again. Let us work with our hands, not with our greed." But a young man named Chike rose and spoke boldly. "Father Obinna, we respect you, but the world is changing. Why should we stay poor when others grow rich? We can take from the river and still praise it." The crowd murmured in agreement. Obinna sighed. "Chike," he said softly, "wealth without wisdom is a curse that wears the face of blessing." Still, the people did not listen. Within months, the market by the river grew again. Traders built bigger stalls. Hunters began selling sacred fish from the river, and palm wine flowed without restraint. The songs of gratitude turned once again to songs of profit. One afternoon, a strange wind swept across the village. It carried no dust, no rain, only a deep stillness that made even the trees stop swaying. That night, the moon turned red. The elders gathered in fear. "It is a warning," one whispered. Obinna stood, feeling the chill of truth. "Peace demands respect," he said. "We cannot dance on the edge of greed and expect the gods to smile." The next morning, tragedy struck quietly. The river's fish began dying again, not from anger this time, but from waste. The villagers had poured refuse into the water without care. Crops near the banks began to wither, and children who drank from the river fell ill. The same traders who once praised Umuaro's prosperity now packed their goods and left. The market grew silent, and fear returned. Obinna gathered the people once more beneath the Iroko tree. His voice was firm this time. "We have been forgiven before, but forgiveness does not come without learning. The river gave us life, then took it and gave it again. Yet we keep testing her heart. Are we not ashamed?" The crowd was silent. Even Chiki lowered his head. Then Obinna rose and pointed to the river. "The goddess has shown us that peace is not the end of struggle. It is the beginning of responsibility. To keep peace, we must guard our hearts from pride." He led the villagers to the water's edge. One by one they knelt and placed their hands on the river, whispering prayers. The water was calm and warm, reflecting their faces, not angry, not vengeful, only watching. From that day, Obinna made a decree. No man or woman would take from the river without first giving thanks. Every moon, the people would offer their first harvest by the water, not in fear, but in gratitude. Seasons passed. The village learned patience. The markets grew slower, but more honest. The children of Umuaro learned songs that praised both work and humility. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Obinna sat again by the river. The old beads still hung around his neck, glowing softly in the fading light. Beside him, young Chicken knelt, his face humble. "Father," he said, I see now what you meant. Peace is not just when the river is quiet, it is when our hearts are. Obinna smiled faintly. Yes, my son. The river's calm begins within us. They sat in silence, watching the water flow. Birds returned to their nests, and the night wind carried the gentle hum of a grateful village. The river, once a furious teacher, now flowed as a gentle friend. And as stars blinked awake in the sky, Obinna whispered, "True wealth is not in what we gather, but in what we keep pure." The rains had returned to Umuaro, blessing the farmlands once again. The river flowed with a calm rhythm, and peace had become the village's daily song. But like a seed buried deep in the soil, greed never truly dies. It waits for the right season to sprout again. Obinna had grown older now, his beard streaked with grey. He spent most of his mornings by the river, teaching the young ones about patience and respect for the goddess. The villagers still honored him, but the new generation had begun to see his ways as old-fashioned. The world was changing fast, and the youth hungered for the glitter of easy wealth. Among them was Tunde, the son of Chik, the same Chik who once challenged Obinna under the Iroko tree. Tunde was a clever and restless boy, always dreaming of riches beyond the river. He often stared at the traders who came from the city with their shiny clothes, loud music, and proud laughter. To him, they were kings of a new world, and he wanted to be one of them. One afternoon, as Obinna rested beneath the old tree, Tunde approached him. "Baba," he said with a respectful tone, "you taught my father that the river blesses those who work with clean hearts. But look, those who deceive and trade false goods grow richer than we who pray and farm. What kind of blessing is that?" Obinna looked up at him calmly. "The river's blessing is not measured by gold or clothes. It is measured by peace of spirit," Tunde smirked. "Peace cannot build a house, old man." The elder sighed, his heart heavy. He saw in Tunde's eyes the same flame that once burned in his own, the desire to rise, but this time without patience or balance. Soon, whispers spread through the village that Tunde had found a mysterious trader who promised wealth through a charm hidden beneath the river. Many laughed it off as foolish talk, but curiosity is a strong wind. It blows even the strongest minds off course. One dark night, Tunde led a group of young men to the riverbank. The moon hid behind the clouds, and the wind whispered warnings through the trees. They carried torches and a small calabash filled with palm oil and cowries, gifts for whatever spirit they hoped to awaken. Tunde spoke boldly, "River goddess, if you truly hold wealth, show it to us now. We are not afraid. Give us your treasures." The river responded with silence. Then a slow ripple that grew into waves. The ground trembled. The young men stumbled back as a mist rose from the water. In that mist appeared a faint, glowing figure, neither woman nor spirit, but something in between. Her voice was soft, yet sharp as thunder. "You ask for what you do not understand. Wealth without wisdom brings ruin. Leave now before the water claims what is not hers." Fear gripped the boys, and they fled, all except Tunde, who stood frozen, trembling but proud. "You cannot scare me," he shouted. "If my father could face you, so can I. Give me what I seek." The spirit sighed deeply. The river turned red, and lightning flashed across the sky. Tunde screamed and fell to his knees as his torch went out. When the storm cleared, he was gone, swallowed by the very river he had tried to command. By dawn, the story had spread like wildfire. Villagers gathered by the riverbank, their faces filled with sorrow. Obinna arrived, his walking stick trembling in his hands. When he saw Tunde's slipper floating on the water, he closed his eyes and whispered, "The river has spoken." That evening, the sky wept rain again, but it felt different, heavier, mournful. The people repented, offering prayers and sacrifices at the water's edge. Chiki knelt beside Obinna, tears streaming down his face. "I failed to teach my son," he said bitterly. Obinna placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, brother. The world failed to remember. Greed always returns when gratitude sleeps." As the rain continued to fall, the river flowed calmly once more, not with anger, but with sorrow and wisdom. And from that day, a new saying spread through Umuaro: "The river may forgive, but it never forgets." The people learned again that true wealth is not gold or land, but the wisdom to stay humble even after blessings come. Yet, in the quiet of that same night, an old woman walking by the river claimed she saw a faint light beneath the water, as though Tunde's restless spirit still searched for the treasures he could never hold. The goddess had restored peace, but her warning remained. Wealth without soul is a shadow that devours its owner. The Hamatan wind swept through Umuaro, carrying with it the scent of dust and memory. The air was dry, the sky pale, and the river calm yet watchful. Time had softened the village's spirit. Tunda's story had become both a warning and a wisdom passed from mouth to mouth. Children whispered it at night, and elders repeated it by the fire. Greed drinks faster than thirst. Obinna, now frail but glowing with quiet dignity, sat outside his hut, overlooking the river. His walking stick leaned beside him, and his faithful beads hung around his wrist. He watched as a group of children fetched water, laughing and chasing one another. Among them was a little boy with bright eyes and a calm smile, Chima, Tunde's younger brother. Chima often sat by Obinna's side, eager to listen to the old man's tales. One evening, as the sun melted into gold behind the hills, he asked softly, "Baba, will the river ever forgive my brother?" Obinna smiled gently. "The river forgives faster than man, but forgiveness does not erase memory, my son. It teaches it." Chima nodded, his gaze fixed on the river's glittering waves. He had grown into a thoughtful boy, patient, respectful, and humble, the very opposite of Tunda. And yet, Obinna saw in him a spark, not of greed, but of purpose. That season, the village faced a new test. The harvest was poor, and many feared hunger. The river level dropped, fish became scarce, and murmurs began. Perhaps the goddess had withdrawn her favor. But instead of panic, Chima proposed a different way. "Let us give what little we have to those with nothing," he said at the meeting under the Iroko tree. "If we share, the river will see our hearts." The elders exchanged glances, some skeptical, others hopeful. But Obinna, weak yet smiling, stood slowly and placed a trembling hand on Chima's shoulder. "He speaks truth. The river listens not to words, but to actions. Let kindness be our prayer." And so the people of Umuaro shared what they had, yam by yam, fish by fish, water by water. Even the poorest contributed something. Days passed, then weeks, and still they shared. One morning, when the sun rose bright and full, the villagers heard the sound of rushing water. They ran to the riverbank, and there the river flowed stronger than before, filled with fish and glistening reeds. A cheer erupted. Drums beat again in the village, and joy returned. Chima became the symbol of a new generation, one that sought wealth not in gold, but in unity. The people began to say, "When we give, the river grows." That night, the goddess appeared once more, not in wrath or storm, but in light and calm mist. Only Obinna saw her. She stood upon the water, radiant and silent. "You have taught them well, son of the soil," she said softly. "Wealth is not what fills the hand, but what fills the heart. When men forget this, the river reminds them." Obinna bowed deeply, tears rolling down his aged cheeks. "Mother of waters, I have seen enough. Let your peace remain." When dawn came, the villagers found Obinna sitting by the river, head bowed, a smile on his face. His staff lay beside him, his beads around his wrist. But his spirit had returned to the river he loved. The water around him shimmered like glass, reflecting the morning sun. The people wept, but their tears were not of sorrow, they were of gratitude. They buried him beneath the great Iroko tree, the place of his wisdom. Chima poured a handful of river water on his grave, whispering, "May your soul flow forever." In time, Umuaro flourished. The river never dried again, and the people never forgot. Traders came from afar, not to take, but to learn from the village that turned giving into wealth. The story of Obinna and the river goddess spread across lands, reminding many that true wealth is the circle of kindness. What flows out always returns. As the years passed, children gathered by the river every evening to hear Chima tell the same story, how a man sought wealth, found wisdom, and left behind a village richer than gold. And whenever the moonlight touched the water, it glowed faintly, as though the spirit of Obinna still watched over Umuaro. The river flowed endlessly, whispering the same truth through generations. The hand that gives never runs dry. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.